I heard about it, I just parked in front of the building there. I looked up, and here was this artwork that really grabbed my attention off the street. And just a few minutes later, I read the paper, came to find out that it's a big controversy, and there are people that are trying to get him to take it down. So I immediately went in and encouraged him to leave it up. Just this community needs to have its mind open a little bit. They're a little closed. Anything they don't like, they try to get rid of it. And so I told him, you know, if I could have afforded to buy anything in there, I would have, just to support him economically. I figured I'd give him a little moral support anyway. I'm glad they showed the courage to leave it up as long as they did, and I hope they continue showing good art, because the amazing thing is that you know, the art itself seemed to be, you know, opposed to what people were accusing of promoting violence. And obviously the artist was a critic of violence. And
do you think that was in part what the art is about, actually, is a sort of sarcasm or irony or something like Twain or something? And I'm thinking it's like a parody of violence, really.
That's what I thought. I'm not an art critic, but you could see there were a few clues on the canvas there to let you know that it was definitely a parody. And, and even if it wasn't, you know, it's they've got every right in the world to put it up there. And here's all these people using their freedom of expression to try to shut down the freedom of expression of the people that are running that store. I think it's great that they put that up there. I hope they have more art come in and help open up the community a little bit.
This is Rich Doyle. My name is Greg Beckley. We're with the group Cold Mountain Cold Rivers, the local non-profit corporation that specializes in media, human rights, and environmental issues. Always concerned with issues of censorship, and we have been, despite the corporate censorship of the Missoulian, we have gotten little dribbles of news about some art out of Hamilton, and I guess it was yours, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about it while you work.
Well, the painting that caused most trouble was called Family Fun, and it was about, had a couple clad in, you know, S&M clothes on a bare bed springs with rats underneath, a TV in the corner, and pictures of the children, our children, and they were the rats. And it is a statement against passing on sadomasochistic fantasy and behavior, and it is against that. If you have any kind of sense of what irony is in storytelling or narratives, you would probably appreciate the painting, but if you don't, you wouldn't.
So could I be so bold as to suggest that the people who criticized your work for not upholding American values maybe could read some Mark Twain and learn a little bit about maybe something like irony, satire, humor?
There's a lot of whole huge body of people who don't get that. Then on the other hand, it was a shock for that community to see work like that. And it was quite the strange decision to leave my work there. I'm just really breaking out and starting, and I haven't had any trouble in museums. I've been welcome to museums. The director said they love the shows. But that is more of a closed situation. The director made it public art. He put it in his window, but he was treating me just like everyone else.
There wasn't any special treatment for you as an artist. It was just you were another artist going to his gallery, right? And so the other artwork is in his gallery is landscapes and more familiar type genre too. Hinterlands. I think Missoula's, you know, probably citizens of Missoula wouldn't have trouble with it. But it's just so new and that they just decided they couldn't handle it. Now, it doesn't look like, I mean, we're here today and we've got photographic evidence that appears to suggest, or video, that you're not really promoting a culture of violence. Or I don't know, though, what are you going to do with this poor ball is the question.
I know. Well, I like to use, there's another artist that uses stuffed toys, and I really liked what he did with toys and refuse. They remind you of your childhood, and I find everybody finds sources in their childhood for their art. And so these guys are going to be like little sacrificial dudes for the animals, like ward away dudes.
I see. Totemic, sort of totemic, like totem pole. Or like in the Buddhist temples, they've got the guardians outside, etc. So it does have really deep, could have deep religious.
You know,
even outside of the
cow.
Mormon tabernacle, they probably have something.
Right.
And here we had the remnants of the animal that, you dial a sound, zebra noise or something. I don't know.
Well, we did one. I had a photograph. I should have brought it. It was of the buffalo. They were shooting the buffalo coming out of Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah?
And we made a lottery thing out of it because it was a lottery to go kill them. So it was like Buffalo Lotto, life and death.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Well,
so
you must have heard about the buffalo escape to Big Piney,
No.
where I live. Near where I live, the father took his son out and they plugged it. And it has the same protection as a gopher does.
So anyway, do you have any special message for the citizens of Hamilton?
Well, let's see. What's the? You know what? Well, I met all the cool citizens, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. There are a lot of, and I am so amazed that they spoke up, and I'm impressed. Because where I live, the liberals do not speak up.
Right. So
And they're not afraid of it. The only one repercussion that happened, they had kind of an opening party yesterday for me there. They invited all their friends, and they wanted to get chairs, and the chairs wouldn't be rented to them from this other conservative group. They're trying to crush Peter a little bit.
Right.
So
people will just stand up or sit on the floor.
But I didn't meet the other guys, which I have a good idea what their line of thought is. But the neat people in Hamilton needed to be, praised, and they really like it. Some people got more business, and they were enjoying it. They said they really enjoyed it.
Okay.
So.
And what about? Okay, now what about?
Tell that town to get with it.
Now, violent images maybe that might appear in
talk
your
about
art.
this.
You know what I mean? This is very important.
Peter tends to have all my readjusted Christian myths. I do all kinds of myths, including pagan, and I'm kind of into finding out the roots of all these things. They're all kind of passed down. So I remembered. When you study art history, you're so fascinated by all these martyred people.
Right.
And Saint Sebastian is there, and in the one they don't like, there's the crucifix. There's a crucifix, isn't it?
Right.
So why are we so fascinated with suffering?
Right.
Why don't we get over it?
Right.
That's what I want to say. Get over it, quit suffering, and have a good time.
It is Easter, by the way, and here we are with the Easter toy.
Yes.
We're having a pretty good time, right?
Yeah, right. It's like, now I bet a lot of people think this is absolute icky trash, but it can be art, It is the same, it is. If it was made out of bronze, everybody would say, wow, cool.
And if it was buried in some Minoan culture, right?
Yes, and now it's going to be stuck to a tree. So we're doing it close to where the children play and live, and we thought that this would be more suitable than where the more serene type live down the road, but we had to say something.
But as nice as it is, we're still dealing with bondage issues here.
I'm like wiring stuff to another wire.
And how does say the oppression of other people in these sort of sadistic or masochistic ways works too, relate to nature and our relationship with nature?
Really?
That's another good question.
Yes, it is a good question. I think that we're here trying to do a compromise with nature in this project. I think what we need to do is get rid of the sadomasochistic model because it is destructive to us and the planet. Because, I guess it's, in other words, we're making the whole planet, whole globe suffer. And for some reason we think that's going to make it better.
Yeah.
But I don't think, realistically, it does not make it better. It does not make us better to hurt each other.
Right.
Or to hurt ourselves. So we just need to get rid of that and get more balanced, centered. You've heard those cool words before, and get rid of that model because it's just destructive and it's going to destroy this planet. I think in an old, like a sadomasochistic model, we would go out and kill the beaver here.
And that does seem to be the prevailing model of this society, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
it relates to aggression. It relates to aggression and guilt a lot, don't you think?
Yeah.
And of being feeling unworthy. And it does seem there's a positive feedback system built in that we look around, we realize we are unworthy, then we want nature to spank us, kind of thing, So but the whole thing starts degenerating.
It's a bad cycle. So
yeah,
it's like gong. It actually I made the art to get rid of that cycle. In Hamilton right now, and for my personal, use. Yes, it has.
Sure.
And hopefully the viewers when they understand that, they go, oh, this is not good. These whether they're fantasies
Right.
or they're a big steamroller.
Right.
You know, they can take a walk. Somehow we can build something else
Right.
that's a little bit nicer.
So, I guess for right now, one thing we could do is to make fun of some of this stuff, right?
Yeah, see,
Right.
that's one way of getting rid of it.
Right, is to
I
make fun of it, right?
Yeah.
And to bring it out to light. It's like time to bring the rats out of the closet, right?
Right. It is, and if you don't identify it, laugh at it, you start to bury it, and then you don't know it's there,
Right.
and you start being a robot, you know. So it's a lot of. I mean, gee, I had to research a lot in psychology. Being a teacher for so long, I even was a emotionally disturbed expert for a while. And
What do you mean by emotionally disturbed expert? That has a
Since I
double
was
meaning.
Right. Well, no, I was in charge of testing kids for being emotionally disturbed. I was the watchtower of, are they acting
Watchtower.
right?
We can cut. We've got. I don't know what magazine we'll be able to cut to there. Anyway.
Yeah, so that was one of my jobs I had, and I also was a, occupational therapy technician. Art people can do anything.
They have to do everything, right?
So it was one of the jobs. But I found I was getting kind of upset at my job when the mothers were hitting their kids in front of me.
Yeah.
So I got kind of like checked out and went to get my MFAs.
Yeah. Time to change venues a little bit, right? Let somebody
Yeah.
else deal with it for a while.
Yes. Just get out of it. But
And you're living where now?
in Pinedale, Wyoming.
Pinedale,
A town
Wyoming.
of 1,000 people south of Jackson Hole, and it's going to be winter till June.
Okay.
So, I'm in an art group. We have there's Sue and Dwayne and I all live together as a trio, and we do interactive guerrilla type art too. So,
Well, it sounds like if you're interested in this and you want to get out of, we're developing good connections with a bunch of artists in El Salvador, okay? And maybe some winter you'll want to come down
Yes,
there
I
and do
would.
guerrilla art.
Yeah.
These people did very good guerrilla art.
one of our latest pieces, Sue will have to give you a piece, is the Back Alley vasectomy kit. So,
It's great, thanks.
usually men kind of.
Thanks. Well, it looks like we got the beginning. We could make one out of this. But.
I'm curious about a few more details about the story in Hamilton. Was it taken to local government, the issue, or?
Oh yeah. In fact, they're working on a new law.
Great.
I didn't really know this until I saw this article on Peter's table, and I said, they're actually going to write up a new ordinance to maybe try to prevent it from happening again.
Oh, to keep
There
you
are
out of
people-
town.
Yeah. So that's up in the air. So it
So
probably shouldn't be dropped yet.
Yes.
Nobody's been able to write an obscenity law yet, have they? I mean,
That's
just sort of
ridiculous.
up in the air. There is no nudity in these things. Let's see, just the fact that she's tied up. They're wearing.
But what about
masks.
cartoons?
Yes.
Snidely
well,
Whiplash, right?
Right.
All those things.
Well, how about Mighty Mouse?
Yeah.
What about okay, who was else? Oh, Betty Boop. That was S&M all the way.
Yeah.
I really liked those when I was a kid. I didn't know better.
Right.
So, I finally know better.
So it went to city council or something like that?
Yeah, and they're going to work on a new ordinance.
Oh, that's funny.
They told Peter to take them out the window. Well, the 2 weeks are up, and they're out of
So
the
the
window
government. It's the government? How do you say it?
Government.
And you say it in German or is it
Bundestag.
What is it called?
Bundestag.
Okay.
Who went to Peter? The government?
Peter Trump is the owner of the gallery,
Yeah?
and there's an article in the Missoulian or some paper that, and he said, yeah, they are. The city attorney and stuff, they're going to write up a new ordinance.
Okay.
They're looking, see, they really didn't have anything on the laws right now. They haven't been prepared for it or whatever.
So now it's time to really make our move into the Hamilton art scene, isn't it?
They got a great window display there. I said, hey, you could have somebody living in that window.
Right.
You could do some great things there. I just wish they'd truck all the Hamiltonians that don't like this to New York right now and check out the biennial. Contemporary art is something, even like Dwayne and I have done eco kind of art where we took bad Kmart paintings of the Tetons and glued and poured tar over them and glued little airplanes and tanker toys on them. We had them showing in areas like Hamilton, in other words, Pinedale. And those people, they can't handle that.
Well,
I know. I don't. Some people think that kind of thing is sick, and I hear that word a lot, and I go, well, I like being this way,
Right.
and I like my sense of humor. I mean, and you guys, you've got to know where my sense of humor came from. I was raised on Indian reservations, and have you ever met those people that have a great sense of humor? And I think it got
we're real
passed off.
we're
and all my paintings try. I mean, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian last summer, and I said I watched hours of comedy shows, and I said, well, I'll probably get stage fright. And then you need lots of practice. You should be doing this from birth, maybe. Excuses like that. And I said, wait a minute, I do this with my paintings. So, what's wrong, here? So that was. Finally, I realized I was doing it. I think you should put it on. I think it should be on. We found it here.
Right, it's part of nature.
Yeah, it's become
It's the water.
So
it's good. It's the water.
So have you actually laughed at your own paintings?
Oh yeah, I just sit there and laugh hysterically. I had done that for a long time. Where's my little screwdriver you got?
I just got this.
Oh, there.
And this is.
Yeah, you can really get decorative.
Okay.
I do laugh at myself.
I can. Okay.
And,
speaking of mutilation and
I get a lot of my ideas playing the piano. So
like that.
afterwards, juggling helps and all that.
March 29th, 1993. To the editor. Last week, Don Williamson, Administrative Assistant of the City of Hamilton, City Attorney James A. Haynes, Mayor Laurel Hegstead, and 3 concerned citizens approached me and the manager of Lady Berkeley Art Gallery in connection with the gallery's display of one of Pip Brandt's acrylic paintings entitled Family Fun. The city's official position is that although it does not have an ordinance prohibiting obscenity, Family Fun should be removed from the display window facing Main Street because if the city did enact such an ordinance, Family Fun would be obscene. The gallery disagrees with the city's opinion. Lady Berkeley Art Gallery maintains contractual ties with certain artists, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally recognized for their contribution to fine art. The gallery is in business to display art from a variety of cultures for sale to a worldwide clientele of art collectors, connoisseurs, students of art, and those whose endorsement of Socrates' dictum, "The unexamined life is not worth living," has brought them to the Lady Berkeley. I doubt very much that the city of Hamilton would wish at this time to entertain another harassment suit, but this is a litigious nation, and the Bitterroot Valley does receive its allotment of electronic stress, which clouds the brain with infinite interference fantasies. If it be so that Pip Brandt's Family Fun has been shown nationwide and was shown publicly for 1 month last fall at the University of Montana's UC Gallery, then it is not true that it violates Montana obscenity statutes. If scenes of bondage are to be prescribed by law, then the citizenry could cry out for the removal of every sculpture and painting even vaguely suggestive of the crucifixion of our Lord and Savior. The narcissism compounded of credulity, superstition, and fanaticism, as William Hogarth depicted in 1762 and currently being exhibited at Lady Berkeley, has always given religion a bad name. For the good of art, art lovers, and the freedom guaranteed by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, may I suggest that dispassion, peace, love, tolerance for what may at first seem bizarre, judge not that ye be not judged, discrimination between the eternal and the ephemeral, the real and the unreal, and the guiding light of reason, exalted through the intuition of the secret heart, be allowed to supersede the lower emotional states which have heretofore been voiced. The critique of scientific, philosophical, literary, artistic, and religious innovation and expression is most objectively and efficiently accomplished by women and men whose education and experience in a particular discipline qualify them as critics. If one should have a burning desire to determine authoritatively what is art, there is an avenue open to all, the PhD in art history. The gallery's interpretation of Family Fun is that Pip Brandt is showing the viewer a post-technological society where television has replaced parenting, children having turned from brats into rats, parents having superimposed a false persona upon their souls, being enmeshed in a subhuman pursuit of the unreal, failing to see that all is light. Light is all there is. Even though the reflection in the eye, for example, does not always exist, there is a person in the eye who does. Bishop Berkeley and his soulmate Anne Forster realized the wisdom of the human species. It would do them a great honor to drop our prejudices in light of their great wisdom.
these has been published. I've published one story in the Sun magazine in North Carolina. And I got one prize for short fiction in my whole life, so at one point it happened. Okay. This story I'm going to read is called Easter Reform, and a partner and I used to work for Weyerhaeuser Company down in the South in Alabama, and we had to go and meet the boys from Weyerhaeuser in a town called Reform, and I was trying to figure out why nobody likes 18-year-old boys one time, and I came up with this story. Okay. It's called Easter Reform. There were crows coming across the river from the cypress swamps, going I don't know where, shrieking like a boatload of lunatics going over a falls. There had been rain just after dawn, and long pounding blows of thunder, and I had rolled across the clammy little fold of bed and looked out the window and prayed to God that it might continue. Pour down, raise the river, flood the road, hold off pursuit until I felt able to get to my feet and make a run for it, or at least make sense when I talked. Making sense was a fine thing, and I planned to start doing it just as soon as I could. The sun came out in terrible force by 7 o'clock. The metal skin of the trailer groaned as it expanded in the heat. With each noise, I would lurch toward consciousness, then make a superhuman effort to return to stupor. Sleep that morning was a vault of blue-gray isolation, tinged with desperation, like passing out on downers at a friend's house when you knew his parents were due home at any minute. I didn't want to leave it behind. I had wrecked my car trying to get home from Tuscaloosa, wrecked it for the third and this time the final time, rolled it off an embankment. I had rubbed off a lot of forward momentum tearing through the corner of a soybean field at the bottom of the embankment, and I really thought control could be regained, when all of a sudden there was Tibby Creek, and the damn car went off in there like it was something it had been waiting for a long time to do. As far as I knew, the car was still there, a sunken relic of an 18th birthday celebration that stretched on for 3 days and took me as far north as Columbus, and that's in Mississippi, as far east as Tuscaloosa, where it's Alabama, where I had lost my main cut buddy Ronald House, and I could only wonder what became of him. There were some things I could remember very clearly. I knew I'd stolen some things from some cars parked outside a bar in either Noxubee or Ecola. And I was hoping that whatever those things were, they weren't floating around in my car in full view of God and everybody. I remember shooting mailboxes with a pistol too. And I didn't have a pistol when we bought the first 12-pack in Reform. I could sort of remember treading pit of water with a little pistol though, and stashing a little pistol in a cane brake by the Tibby Creek Bridge, so I didn't see any need for panic on that count. There is something in the poison left over from liquor that always makes you think of sirens wailing down the highway towards your house. And if you've used a bunch of crank to tamp down your liquor and liven it up, it's easy to convince yourself that you boogered the neighbor's kindergartner or snatched a purse off the old lady that'll turn out to be kin to you. Everything in the humpback trailer was undersized. It was like I was this pale, sick giant thrashing around in there. I got the propane refrigerator open and it was packed with Budweisers. They were glowing red and white, a genuine assault to the eyes. If I had been in a horror movie, when I opened that refrigerator door, the music would have gone crazy. I knocked the buds out of the way, found me a Mountain Dew, and went outside to sit on the steps. It was 10 o'clock, and I was still sitting there, halfway through the Mountain Dew, when my daddy wheeled up in the thicket of vetch and thistles and baby sassafras that was supposed to be the yard. I tried to get up, but I couldn't quite make it. I was wishing I had bothered to dress, since all I had on was an old pair of gym shorts and my special hell-raising hat, a white baseball cap with the brim burned off, and my sunglasses. Daddy despised sunglasses, associated them with shifty people, and we'd had no end of argument about them back when he and I still argued. "You all right?" he asked. I knew he didn't like the look of me. Who would? "I'm fine," I said, thinking about doing a little fishing later. "Rolo Pierce says he gave you a ride home yesterday morning. Said your car was down sunken Tibby Creek." "Yeah," I said. "I swerved off to miss one of Mr. Wallace's cur dogs." "You had to have been drunk, boy, or pilled up one. Don't strain to tell me something didn't ever happen." He glared at me for just a second, but when I didn't say anything, he looked down and scuffed his feet in amongst the weeds. He spat tobacco juice hard, but nowhere near me. He wore glasses, not thick ones, with black plastic frames and a loop of baling wire around the back of his head to hold them on. And when I saw his eyes, they looked worse than mine, filled with a different awful kind of pain. I admired him standing there in his clean work clothes, his pickup all loaded with salt blocks and a fence stretcher and 2 steel chainsaws and on, tools that I'd grown up using with him, tools I was sick to death of that he would never think about one way or another. I had stepped right out of the circle of what he could have expected from me, and it was stranger to him than if one day his cows had all given birth to purple chickens. I'd never been drawn to liquor. He had never been drawn to liquor or town the way I was. And when he was coming up, they didn't even have the drugs that I liked so much. Well, I talked to Ronald's daddy. He looked at me, and this time a little hate came through. He worked his jaws around his tobacco and shook his head. The state picked him up hitchhiking over Easter Reform. Said they found the marijuana on him and locked him up. I tried to reply to that, but when he mentioned reform, a memory came to me that blotted out everything around. Sharp and clear, I could see glorious constellations of broken safety glass sparkling on black asphalt, and the gaping mouths of at least 2 cars with their windshields broke out. I could see an axe handle come down thump on the hood of somebody's Corvette, testing the toughness of fiberglass versus the steel of somebody else's Honda. All under pink-tinted streetlights with a smeared neon sign blinking down behind us. Daddy was still talking when I shook loose of the vision. I ain't even gonna ask you if you own the marijuana too, boy. Your mom and I can't do a thing with you now. I just want you to try to be careful. He walked over to his truck, opened the door, and stopped. I think I'm glad you wrecked that car, Charlie. I think that without that car, you might live long enough to stop acting like a half-wit. We'll have a place set for you at Sunday dinner if you're of a mind to come. Just wear a damn shirt. And he drove off slowly, rattling up the dirt road to his house and his farm, which was running as smoothly and as profitably as ever, if you accepted the fact that his only son had been exiled down the road to a fish camp belonging to his sister, and as far as he could tell, this son would be either on his way to the graveyard or to the state penitentiary before the year was out. After I was told of it, I could remember most of the ride with Rollo Pierce. I had done some drunken, exhausting whining about my life and luck, and probably some bragging too. Bits of the conversation came back to me with a flash of shame as intense as an adrenaline rush, the kind that makes your feet hurt with its surge. Rollo had given me a quaalude, told me to go home and sleep that whole thing off, that things would probably be a lot clearer in a day or two. Ronald and I had bought a lot of beer from Rollo, and I had always admired him as a successful bootlegger and an outlaw of the kind I wanted to be. Now I could be sure he would see me always as a whiny little brat he plucked off the railing of the bridge, and I didn't doubt he would tell the story to anyone he thought might get a kick out of it. That fat son of a whore, I thought, I'll fix his ass. The fish camp had been abandoned for over a year when they turned it over to me. My aunt's husband had gotten on at the Goodyear plant in Tuscaloosa, and they had moved over there to beat the 50-mile drive. The trailer sat up on blocks on a white clay bank 30 feet above the main channel of the Tombigbee River. There had been a dock built into the bank, but the 1973 flood took it and created a deep half-moon shaped eddy where it had been. There was still a sun-blasted, half-rotten ladder of untreated 2x4s hanging precariously on the face of the bank, leading to nowhere, broken off 10 feet above the swirling dark water of the eddy. From where I slumped on the mossy concrete block steps of that trailer, I could see an old swing blade propped against a stack of lumber in the crawl space, and behind that, a ridiculously short John boat turned upside down. I had done nothing with the place since I had moved in a month before, but contemplated it for the few minutes it took to get a good buzz going and tear away in my car. It did not really exist as a place where I lived, or even spent time. It was as if I had been dropped off in the midst of a long trip and was just waiting for a ride to someplace better. Now at least I was sure that ride wasn't going to come. I was stuck, and it seemed worthwhile to put the place in some kind of order, to clean up just a little. The swing blade was dull with rust, but it could be made to cut with a full two-handed swing. I took the weeds of the yard down to a dense, spiky stubble, pushing myself on past noon in the great heat, the sun coming down in shafts like lasers through the leaves of the trees, the thickets all around throbbing with bug noise. A few times I leaned over the short handle of the blade, wrenched up some Mountain Dew and a half cup or so of bile. I slapped my way through a patch of stinging nettle, moved into the patch of dewberries that were coming after one end of the trader like a slow but determined army. When I had finished, the yard was cleared for 50 feet around the front door, save for a swath of dewberries hid by dope plants and a tuft of vetch that marked a nest of ground hornets. In the dust of the crawl space, there were thousands of tiny antlion craters, and I took a piece of grass and thrashed it around in one of them until the antlion took hold, and I dragged him out and dropped him back in again. The lumber didn't look too good, but it had been tucked in out of the weather and was mostly sound. I sorted out a dozen 2x6s, carried them to the edge of the river in the shade of the live oaks, and I nailed together a crazy replica of the ladder that had once led down to the water. The old section was fixed to 2 stout cedar posts, and I broke it loose with a hand sledge and let it fall, watched it break into pieces on the way to the water, and I fixed the first section of the new one in its place. My cigarettes had been in the pocket of my gym shorts, and the packet was crumpled and soaked with sweat. I found one that was nearly intact, and I took a break there in the shade, smoking and drinking water from a gallon milk jug I'd stashed in the freezer. The live oak had a thick branch that reached out over the river, and it would be a perfect place to hang a fish basket or a trammel net. Earlier, I noticed that limb and thought what a fine place to hang myself it would make. I had to be careful not to pause too long, or that style of thinking would well up again. An artesian fountain of every fool thing that I've ever done, in vivid freaking color, complete with a voiceover narrative description. I lowered the second section of ladder down with a length of barged rope, nailed it together as solid as I could with the cheap rope nails that I'd been able to scrounge. When I got the third section fixed, the last 2 rungs were in the river, and I climbed to the end and let go, falling away into the smooth power of the eddy, circling a full time within its grip. The water was very warm on top, cooler down where my feet were. Twice I tried to touch bottom, driving myself down with toes pointed, fearful of slamming into a log or an old nail-studded dock post. I touched nothing, though I sank until my ears pounded, until the surface appeared as round and constricted as a spotlight beam, and I swallowed hard to gain extra seconds and went deeper still, falling out of that place where the light meant anything at all. When I surfaced, I was at the outer edge of the whirl, and I broke free and coasted out into the river. The water was clearer there, stained only a little with tannin from the cypress stands upstream. I could touch the gravel bottom with no effort by exhaling completely and letting my body drift downstream as it fell, arms spread, wide legs bent to take the slight shock of contact. When I surfaced, the river was about 200 yards at that place, and the far side was mostly sandbars, with the water whispering along them close and strong and shallow, breaking here and there around a stump or a log mired in the sand. A few deep-rooted oaks and hackberries survived close enough to overhang the river, and giant growths of poison ivy followed them from the woods out into the sunlight. The vines hung down and trailed their silt-dusted leaves in the water, twisting in the current. This side of the river was favored by fish that liked warm water and unbroken sun, gar and buffalo, bowfin and carp. I had come here daily in the summers before I'd gotten driver's license, hunting the fish with a bow fishing rig I made up out of a bare recurved bow and a coffee can wound with old-time braided fishing line and some warped cedar arrows. I had hunted with an intensity that I don't think I ever matched again, crouching in the water beside the deeper places when the sun was at its highest and visibility its best, wading so slowly along the line of cross currents where the biggest gar hunted shad and red horse. By late afternoon, sometimes the world would take on an aspect of absolute clarity, reduced to the band of dark forest, the tea-colored water with its legions of hidden lives rolling along just out of sight, and the beaches of rich stained sand, piled and sculpted by the rise, dividing them. I walked upstream with the water to my chest and nearly toppling me. I managed to situate myself on the submerged stump of a great cypress, holding on with my legs against the current, just my head and neck above the water. I ducked my head and let the water pour over me, feeling like I'd been in a desert somewhere for weeks, like the beer and methadone had dried me like a piece of fruit, and now I was slowly filling back out to the limits of my form. I shook the water from my hair and eyes. I could see my father's barn set back from the bank, from the river on the next bank upstream, shimmering in the afternoon heat waves, hung with the haze left over from the morning rain. His pastures were dotted with black, hot-looking cedars that offered no shade and crawled with ticks in the springtime. His heeler dogs were making a terrible, excited racket, and I knew he must be getting into his pickup or onto one of the tractors. It would be then about 4 o'clock, this is the time when the heat finished building and leveled off towards evening, the time he always went back to work in the summertime. I heard the Massey Ferguson stutter, cough, and quit, and grind away tiredly for a while. There were specks of rust in the fuel lines, I knew, because we had not cleaned the tank in over a year. The tractor roared into life, idled roughly, roared again, and a cloud of dense exhaust emerged from the tight canopy of the pecan orchard like a smoke signal. Daddy shouted once, clearing the dogs from in front of the wheels, and I heard the hard squeal of the hydraulics as he lifted the bucket of the do-all. I knew I ought to want to be up there helping him. A grown man would never let his old daddy do all that hard work alone. I didn't think a grown man would have run off and left his main buddy in among some trouble he had helped to make either. I resolved to walk the 5 miles to the mini-mart and call the reform jail to ask about Ronald as soon as I got back. And I felt a little twinge that said, be very careful. Don't go making any heavy resolutions on the far side of a hangover. You'll just feel doubly foolish when the cold beers stop glowing and start to look like their good old selves again. And look good again, I knew they would. The smell of crank that made me sick this morning would someday come to me clear and powerful and mysterious, and the chopped line of those greasy crystals would be like a path to adventures and night times beyond my imaginings. Any idiot in my position could have straightened up, quit worrying about what he was missing in town, evened off on the beers and the acid and the pot and the speed, gone back to work at his parents' farm. That was surely beyond reason to expect in my case. All things taken under consideration. I like to see things in a different light. I like the way when you mix the different buzzes, they kind of winnow the person right down to whatever he was really like. And lies that people tried to tell you stuck out in the light of that buzz like a totem pole. Sometimes the dope would open up the countryside so that you were hurtling along past woods and fields you'd known all your life. And they would suddenly blossom hot and dark and as full of promise as any jungle in the Congo. Hell, it was okay if once in a while I woke up bug-eyed and yelling in somebody's field or corner lot with the sun coming up and everybody else just starting their days, sweeping their sidewalks, filling their tractors with diesel, and hoping somehow, somewhere for something better. When I was little, I was always winding the chains on the swing set and spinning, just so I could stagger around the yard and see the world in a different way, hoping maybe that if I spun around hard enough, I'd catch the world off guard, maybe see it doing things that everybody else was missing. Now that I was almost grown, I had found me some powerful new ways to spin and stagger and looked around, and I wasn't fixing to quit. I let go of the stump, and the current pushed me over backwards. I tucked into a ball and rolled along the sand bottom, not thinking for the first time all day. The light coming down through the water, reflecting off the sand, was as close to the pure light of heaven as I ever hoped to see. I broke the surface and cut across the current, swimming too hard and angling upstream. I had just about used up my strength when I caught the eddy below that ladder, and I had to ride all the way around once before I could catch the last rung and climb out, slow and shaky, scared of my own work. The ladder held, and as I topped it out, I saw the Noxubee County Sheriff's car parked on the fresh-cut grass of my lawn, close to the trailer. The sheriff was leaned back with his enormous ass spread out across the center of the hood. He was smoking, arms folded, unconcerned. Behind his car was another car, the reformed city police, with a black officer sitting in the driver's seat, half asleep. There was another car parked out on the dirt road, an Oktibbeha County Sheriff's car, but those fuckers were barking up the wrong tree for sure. Hell, I hadn't been in Starkville for months, not since I'd sold a bucket of psilocybin mushrooms to the fraternity boys at the college. Charlie Perkins Jr., the Noxubee County Sheriff said, and he held out his pair of handcuffs, jangling them, trying to shame me with how little he was worried about me getting away. The handcuffs looked hot and tarnished in the filtered light. I lifted my special hell-raising hat off the cedar post where I'd left it and jammed it down tight on my head. It seemed like a point of pride was at issue. "Get that hood ornament out of your ass, Sheriff," I said. "It's making me sick just to look at you." He came off the car hood exactly like a big toad leaping for a horsefly. I headed for the trailer, walking real fast, but it was clear I wasn't going to get there. Not for a long time, anyway. Not till they had done whatever it was they had planned to do with me. The big nigger from Reform was coming on awful fast. I fainted with the sheriff, double back with the river in my mind's eye. But something caught me behind the ear just shy of the drop-off, and I went down hard in the stubble. I wriggled forward until I could see the eddy down there turning slow and slower, and I thought how the river was certainly a refuge, surely a refuge, maybe the only one I'd ever have. It just wasn't one that could work for me right then. Somebody stomped hard on my hand, and a fat red fist came down and made a burning flat pie of my right ear. The whispering of the river got loud, real loud. There was a voice down in there that said Sunday dinner at my folks' house was going to be one hell of a long shot. And that's the Easter Reform.
My aunt had to resort to a coat hanger for abortion.
When I think about all the positive things that I've been able to do with my life, I think about how different my life would be if I hadn't had the option to choose a safe and legal abortion when I was a teenager.
My mother and my father wanted me so desperately and had very few doubts about their ability to care for me, and I just think that every baby in the next generation should be given the same chance at the start.
Pro-choice is pro-life.
Barriers. You break through them. You are immortal. You die alone. In the age of dis-ease, passion is still possible. Be caring, be careful.
Before 1945, chemical farming was unheard of in America. Now it's a fact of life and death. Wise up, America. Support organic farming.
World peace or world talk. Do we run or do we walk? Charge. If you want world peace, take it. Cause a lot of our leaders fake it. It's similar to Armageddon, when the positive people stop letting the negative control how we live. Listen to the music I give. Do you really want world peace?
Sí, pues claro.
Uya la funana o ulo sabeni?
Eu.
Wundala ku ulaga samantanam venduma?
Katayam Vendum.
We must make up our minds to take it.
Take it!
If we really want world peace, and we want it right now.
Right now!
We must make up our minds to take it.
You know, what I'd like to know is if everybody wants world peace, why is it so hard to achieve?
Right now!